Would you say those things were typical of the time, both the publisher kind of pushing his own political agenda,
Well,
also reporters
I think that Mr. Annenberg went beyond what was normally done, but yes, I do think that it was a different time, and editors like Harry Ashmore and others had behind-the-scenes involvement in the stories that their staff were covering. And we know today that's not a good thing. It's difficult for me to say to judge, don't want to judge people of another era, but that was what was accepted at the time. But I think that to the extent really corrupting the news coverage, that certainly the Annenberg regime at the Enquirer was not good, and that was Knight Ridder bought the paper. Knight newspapers, the predecessor of Knight Ridder, bought the paper January 1, 1970. Gene Roberts was its second editor, came in October 72, and I joined the paper in February 73. And we were dealing with the residue of that era. And so definitely we needed to try to change the course. Now, we did have our own problem in 76 and 7 when a reporter, same last name as mine, but we're not related, Laura Foreman, was found to have been involved in a romantic relationship with Harry Buddy Cianfrani, who was then a Pennsylvania state senator from Philadelphia, who was one of the leading political forces in the state. She was covering politics, clearly a conflict of interest, which she had denied to Gene Roberts. But when the FBI investigated Cianfrani, who was eventually sent to prison on corruption charges, they found evidence of multiple gifts to Laura, which kind of proved the relationship. And so that led to Gene Roberts to say we need to write a conflict of interest code of ethics so that everybody understands what we stand for. That we now not only are trying to live down the reputation of the Annenberg Enquirer, which a lot of people are not aware there's been a change, but we got our own problem that we need to try to overcome. So that was a period in which I think that certainly at the Enquirer, but in the newsrooms generally across the country, things were starting to change.
So there had.
And nowhere was this more marked than in the acceptance of gifts from people that we covered, whether it be politicians or businesses. And I remember when I first started working at the Arkansas Gazette, that the electric company, the Arkansas Power and Light, would give everybody in the newsroom a gift. And you could look around and see the guy who covered the State Public Service Commission would get a big electric oven. Other people would get a toaster or something. So there was a pecking order. And I asked people, what about this? And they said, oh, this is just part of the business. We don't get paid very much. And so free admissions and gifts are just part of the trade. And the racetrack, Oaklawn at Hot Springs, would throw a big party every year for the press, which is kind of the big social event of the year. And nobody thought a lot about that.
So here's a softball question. What's the problem?
What was the problem?
Ethically.
The problem, yeah. Well, we cover these people, and they were taking gifts from them, so it would appear to the public that if they became aware of the gifts, which you had to assume they were, that we had a debt to them, and that more likely would be paid in the way we covered the news. It's called an appearance of conflict of interest that we don't, that maybe we didn't, and that's what the reporters would tell me. The older reporters is that, look, I'm not going to be bought out for a toaster, but I'll take the toaster and I'm going to cover him just the way I would anyway. I know that I'm honest, but what we realized as we started thinking about it, and I think that was the key, is you really started thinking about it. And I think that our generation became editors, say, in the 70s, and we had the Hutchins Commission's recommendations on the social responsibility of the press issued in 1947, that I think it had some effect, even though at least on the surface, the editors rejected that, but I think it did make an impression. And as we as we went along, and the older people who told me about it's okay to take a poster, retired and moved on and replaced by even younger journalists, I think that things changed by evolution. But it really did have a marked change. The evolution sped up in the 70s.
At what point did you see reporters starting to come in, young reporters just out of school, who now had ethics training as students?
I don't know that I know which ones did and which one didn't, but I think that the education level was continuing to rise. When I went into business, 50% of the reporters did not have college degrees. And now any survey in daily newspapers show that well over 90%, and probably anybody coming in the last 20 years has got a college degree. So I think the education level has risen, and a lot of them probably did have some ethics training, but I'm not sure that I can say which ones did and which ones didn't. I feel good about the people at the paper, and I think that irrespective of their educational background, that they almost I would even innately understood the importance of ethics. I say innately, but I think that we were innate too, but we benefited from what we learned in the last 50 years, and we learned from, as we went along. If we made a mistake, I think that one thing I contributed to the dialogue there in the newsroom was, let's figure out why, if we had it do over again, or if a similar situation presented itself in the future, what could we do to have a better outcome? And I think that sort of post-mortems is very helpful and useful. And we would do that whether it happened to us or whether it happened to another newspaper. I remember Janet Cook's story about Jimmy, the 8-year-old heroin addict, was an unnamed, what I call an unnamed principal or subject of the story. It went even beyond an unnamed source, which we knew enough then that the public did not like anonymous sources. We think that there's sometimes we've got to give information that anonymous sources can only provide. But the misuse of anonymous sources, or the abuse or excessive use of it, is a problem. Yeah, I have a chapter in the book. My short name for it is Love and Hate chapter. Is they love what we give them. They, deep down, I think they do accept the news that we give them by and large, even though they may tell a surveyor that I don't believe anything that the newspaper, but they read it every day, and they certainly blog about it or talk radio about the lying newspapers. But this is where they get their information. So I think that I can't really explain why there is this antipathy toward journalists. Certainly the Gallup poll, which rates the ethics, perception of ethics and the different perception, puts us about middle way, ahead of, say, of used car salesmen and congressmen, but well behind nurses and teachers. In my view, that we ought to be near the top, because we have very good standards, which the public doesn't seem to know much about. And I think maybe we ought to do a better job of telling them what our standards are. But if Anthony Scalia, the Supreme Court justice, can go hunting with somebody who's then going to have a case before the United States Supreme Court, and he sees nothing wrong with it, well, we know if our reporter went hunting with somebody who's going to write a story about that it's very crucial that it be impartial and everything, that's wrong. That we have higher standards on conflict of interest than most judges do, and they have the ability to make rulings that have the ability, have the teeth of the law, and all we can do is try to tell the public what's going on. So I can't really explain this, but I think they do perceive that we're arrogant, and sometimes we give them ammunition for that. What I say is that what we should do in journalism is to always try to do the right thing, never deliberately make a decision that would justify this kind of criticism, but also recognize that we're not going to be popular, that we ought to be true to our code, true to our being accurate, fair, and recognize our responsibility to respect the audience and respond to their questions, but also recognize that sometimes we had to tell them that we were right and here's why we made the decision we did. So we either correct if we're wrong, if the public points out we're wrong, it's a correct and reform. But if we were right, and our rechecking of the story's facts shows that we had it right the first time, is to say this is the way we did it, and to explain our decisions. That's what we talk about being accountable that you and I teach in the classroom, is to respect the audience and tell the audience either what we got wrong and here's what's right, or we think we had it right and here's why we did it that way. Daily News Summary is sponsored by a bank and has the bank's ad on it, and the whole thing is done outlining the trademark color of the bank. It's more problematical, a business column on the front of the business section is sponsored by a bank. Several television radio stations have sole naming rights to their newsrooms. A television station in Nevada has product placement on their news and feature interview sessions where they have McDonald's coffee cups in front of the anchors and interviewers. There have been television programs that have all appear to be like Today or Good Morning America. They're done locally, but the difference is that some of the people are paying them to be interviewed on their program and talk about their products without, in my view, proper notification of the audience, which ought to be crystal clear what's an ad and what's a news story or what's entertainment. So I think that in the area of advertising, which flows from the necessity to try to make ends meet, has led to what I think are some questionable decisions. This is not so much the newsroom as it is the news organization altogether. You also can have video as television does, and certainly audio the way radio does. And all of this is interactive, and it's on demand. And they have everything except, I guess, portability, and I guess in some areas we're coming to that with handheld devices. Whether that gives you the satisfaction, say, of reading a newspaper sitting in an easy chair and reading something on a handheld device, to me that doesn't seem to equate, but maybe to a younger generation that was brought up on electronics, that's fine. So I think that we're trending in that direction. What concerns me is that while there are a lot of very good thinkers out there, and I'm thinking of people like Kinsey Wilson, who just left USA Today's running its website, now is at NPR, a very thoughtful person. And there are others, Ken Sands now at Congressional Quarterly, Fred Mann, who I worked with at the Inquirer and ran our website for its first 10 years, that I really enjoy and always have all my life enjoy very thoughtful letters to the editor column, whether it's a magazine or in which I know that they're going to be tightly edited, that everybody will have a thoughtful position, whether it's something I agree with or not, and I welcome that diversity of opinion. But what I see, I just cannot adapt to a vulgar and mean-spirited posting. But I think they've got to solve the problems like the ones I've just mentioned, and I don't see them being solved now. Standards are being set without a lot of thought being given that we are creating a template for the future of journalism, which are going to continue ad infinitum. But also we're trying to teach you how to make good decisions, and while you're informed by what the prevailing standards are in the profession, you're not bound to them. And if you can come up with better solutions, then I want you to do that. And particularly, you have to solve the problems of the internet that I don't think are solved today.